Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold those in power to account. We tell you why it matters and why you should care. Now, COVID-19 is the biggest challenge the globe has ever faced, with millions locked down as countries struggle to contain the spread and deal with its impact in social and economic terms. In South Africa, we are in the third day of our lockdown, the aim of which is to slow down the spread of the virus and to allow for massive testing and pushing back the pandemic. South Africa's inequalities and disease profile places an extra burden on our society, and government has gazetted several regulations to ease the burden of South Africa's more than 16 million who rely on social grants for assistance. Joining me from her house this morning to look at how grant recipients will be affected is Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Minister, thank you so much for agreeing to come on The Fix in these unusual times. It's also a challenge for us as broadcasters. We are not bringing guests into the studio. Much appreciated that you were allowing us to do this from your home. You said yesterday during your briefing that the Post Office and SASSA are making all arrangements for the social grants to be paid out. We understand the elderly and the disabled will get paid tomorrow. Can you just give a little bit more detail on what those arrangements are, Minister?
Yes, we are working around the clock together with the MECs of all provinces and the regional managers of SASSA, as well as SASSA National, to make sure that we make it easy for our elderly to be able to access their social grants, but also to be able to go out and buy a few of the basic necessities that they normally buy when they get their SASSA grants. But of course, we're saying to everybody, it's abnormal situation, it's extraordinary situations that need extraordinary action. So the first thing that we've been doing, we've really been calling on the social grant recipients themselves to appreciate the challenges that we are facing, but also to appreciate all the directives that have been given, firstly by the President and in particular by the President. I think that the majority of our people are appreciating the disaster that we have in front of us and are helping us to try and manage it.
Minister, let me just come in here.
All
Minister,
SASSA officials.
Yes, you were saying all SASSA
Yes.
officials are going to be doing what?
All SASSA officials have to be out in all the pay points, and the post office also has deployed much more than usual. Also, we've had discussions with the retailers who have really stepped up to try and assist us in this. That's not to say that it's going to be honky-dory, it's going to be easy. We are also talking to the Minister of Transport to see what is it that we can do, because the hours also that are out there for the transport are a little bit difficult for us. We are also talking to the Department of, we are talking to Defense to see what assistance they can do in terms of transporting. We will be using the fleet of SASSA, but we'll also be using the fleet of the department to assist, because we never normally don't give that kind of transport to our people. But this time around, because of the challenges, the fleet is ready, the drivers are ready, they've got all the necessary permits to help where help is needed.
Now, Minister, one of the things, of course, when people are in the queues is that they must practice that social distance. We've seen other countries such as India and others where, the lines have been drawn in such a way that people have been put into blocks with the necessary distance between them. Can you tell us whether that is going to be done? And then also, importantly, those transport arrangements, obviously the vans cannot be packed full. They have to be at 50% of the capacity. How is that going to work?
We are relying on people that will be on the ground, Karima, because it's one thing for me to sit here and say that we've got all those plans. We are relying on the MECs, we are relying on the local structures, we are relying on provincial governments to also step up. And I have been speaking to all the MECs of all provinces, because the only way that we can get this done is to make sure that at a local level, at a provincial level, the plans that we have are implemented there. Yes, I know that it's going to be very difficult, and I can assure you that everyone is working around the clock, because the clock is ticking. Monday is already around the corner. SASSA has done really as much as they possibly can. We are also looking at what could be the challenges, and the challenges basically will be getting people to the place where they have to get their money, and the fact that we've tried to separate and say the elderly must go first tomorrow as well as the 31st, and then the others follow after. We planned that a little bit earlier, because normally you have to get the money from Treasury. Treasury gave us the money much earlier in order for us to be able to pay a bit early.
Now, just quickly, Minister, in terms of the disabled, obviously these are people that need physical assistance, and this is a big challenge because we are talking about people not touching other people and keeping their distance. How have you arranged for people who are disabled to collect their grants, because they obviously need assistance? And more importantly also, this is cash that is going to be handed out. We know that the virus lives on surfaces. Will the money be sanitized? How are people going to access mobile points? Are the mobile points themselves going to be sanitized? Exactly how is it going to work? And will the Department of Health have people on standby?
We also, look, we've agreed that first and foremost, the people, when they come to collect their grants, they need to keep the distance, number one. We've even looking at having volunteers who can be able to help us here so that people can be sanitized and also keep the distance. We've got the plans to get that going, but again, I will be able to, I'm saying here, challenges, we are going to face the challenges. We just really would like to call on our people to appreciate the fact that it's not normal. Things are not going to go as easy as possible. Let's see what happens on day one, because I think that when people flock out, that's where we'll have to make to make sure that we control. I said earlier, we asked the police, we asked the military to also be able to assist us in high density areas. We've already given the list of the areas that can have a potential for this problem. That list has already been given to the Net Joint. Net Joint is meeting also again to look at our plans and be able to see where are the gaps in our plans.
Now, in terms of the disabled, Minister, you haven't answered my question about people assisting them. How are you going to make sure that those people are safe? And then also just the actual pay points themselves. Are you sanitizing the pay points? Because these are obviously going to be used by many, many people. And then just, are you adding additional mobile points, considering that you don't want people to flog, one area or one pay point, and you want people to be spread out throughout the day?
Yes, we are going to have to add some of the pay points. Remember that the pay points were reduced because the majority of our SASSA grant recipients are now getting their money through the banks. So we already spoke to those who are service providers who are supposed to assist us if in case we need it. And then for the people with disability, we will be also getting transport for them when necessary. Because the one thing that we need to appreciate is that our people are not necessarily not understanding what is going on. They normally make plans for collecting their grants. We don't normally arrange for any transport for anybody under normal circumstances. We are doing this now because of the challenge that we have, and we identified people with disability as people that we also need to focus on.
In terms of the food parcels, some community workers have written to me and asked me to ask you if you are going to, specifically for the elderly and the disabled, are you going to have COVID-19 packs ready, like, for example, with sanitizers, perhaps food parcels? A lot of pensioners and elderly people obviously have money this time of the month. What is going to happen to your spaza shops, your your vegetable sellers. We know that in terms of the regulations, only South African-owned shops are allowed to be open, but we've been told that people must shop to the places closest to where they live. The reality, Minister, is that many of these spaza shops are actually owned by foreign nationals who live in our communities. How are you going to manage that?
Well, it's not our responsibility as the Department of Social Development, really. I think the Minister of Economic Development explained that at length, and the provinces, different provinces have explained at length what their plans are in as far as the spaza shops and in as far as the opening of the shops and the times of the closing of the shops. I do want to say it's abnormal situation. We are calling on our people because it is the human behavior that can either make this happen or not happen. We, on the other hand, are really doing our best to put plans in place, but the plea is to make sure that we get our people to really respect the challenges that we are facing. The people have been asked to try and buy as much as possible closer to where they live. But you know, Karima, people are used to going out to the bigger shops. That's what they're going to try and do. So the control of the queues, as I said earlier on, we've had long discussions. SASSA in particular, the CEO and SASSA have had lengthy discussions in planning for those that are going to be going to the bigger shops in terms of the control of the number of people that go inside the shop, the queues themselves. And I know that in many instances the queues have not been managed very well. We just have to step up and make sure that we manage the queues better than what we've seen happening in different areas.
Minister, you said you've had conversations with retailers who have stepped up. Yesterday I saw pictures, you know, in the Tshwane area, for example, where malls have actually come to the party.
Karim, I'm so sorry, there's a helicopter passing, so I can hardly hear you.
Okay, let me ask that question again, Minister. I just want to ask our viewers to stay patient. This is a live situation, and we are broadcasting in abnormal conditions. Minister, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. The helicopter has gone past.
Okay, fantastic. So if we can just talk about the fact that retailers have come to the party and they are stepping up. Now, we've seen some retailers are complying with social distance. They're managing the queues and the access to the malls. In other instances, they haven't. Which areas are problematic for you? And are you in conversation with those MECs and local authorities to make sure that in high-density areas we don't have large amounts of people congregating like we had on the first day of the lockdown when many people rushed out because they were paid late?
I think that our request to the police and our request to defense was made earlier in anticipation that this is what is going to happen. And our engagement with the retailers was in anticipation of the fact that many of the grant recipients are going to be going out there. My problem is that I could hardly hear the content of your question with regard to the retailers.
Yeah, Minister, I just wanted to know quickly, are you happy that all the retailers will be able to manage their queues? We've seen some of them coming to the party practicing social distance, but in other areas we haven't, and especially in areas where it's not big supermarkets, where it's smaller supermarkets, particularly in townships and in, of course, densely populated urban areas.
It's a call, Karima. The line is very bad. It's a call to us, to the retailers, those that have not been able to step up. It's their responsibility too. It's a call to them, to us, from us to them, to say, work with us in this. We've reached out to you because we think that we also want to be helpful to them. And the experience that we've seen in the past few days when people came out, it should be an experience that needs us to then sharpen our system and see how else can we be able to do this. We are hoping that defense as well as the police are going to be able to step up and really assist us in this. We are also hoping that working with volunteers, we've got volunteers that are going to be out there who are supposed to help us in terms of the sanitization and in terms of keeping the distance.
All right, Minister, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Don't go anywhere.